"I'm sorry I can't pay." Single mother whispered to a stranger at the train station, unaware he was a CEO millionaire looking for. The station was quieter than usual that evening, cloaked in a kind of stillness that came only with the late hour and cold. Winter had crept into the city early that year, brushing its icy breath across the backs of those who had nowhere else to be but here, waiting, watching, working. Lena Matthews pulled her son closer as they approached the ticket counter. Her coat, faded and 2 sizes too big, did little to keep out the chill. Jamie, barely 6, coughed into the sleeve of his sweater, his small frame trembling with each breath. He had been running a mild fever all day, and she knew he needed to get out of the city, out of the cramped apartment with the broken heater, and out into clean air, even if just for a few days. Her sister had offered to take him upstate for a week. It was a blessing. She just needed to get him on the train. She stepped up to the counter, her voice low and cautious. "1 child ticket, round trip, departure tonight." The clerk, a young man with tired eyes, nodded and tapped away at his keyboard. The price came up on the screen, and Lena reached into her purse, pulling out her worn debit card. Please work, she thought, just this once. She had done the math, she had been careful. The clerk swiped the card. It beeped, declined. Lena's breath caught. "Try again," she said, forcing calm into her voice. He did, still declined. She pulled her phone from her pocket, opening her banking app. The screen took forever to load on the station's weak signal, and then she saw it. A pending auto payment had just cleared. An overdue utility bill. Her balance was now $3 short. Her shoulders dropped as she stepped back from the counter, her face flushing with heat and shame. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I can't pay right now. Just keep the ticket. I'll come back." The clerk hesitated, glancing nervously at the line forming behind her. Jamie coughed again, louder this time. He looked up at his mother, his cheeks flushed and his eyes watery. "Mommy, it's cold." "I know, sweetheart," she murmured, kneeling to zip his jacket as far as it would go. "We'll figure it out." Behind them, a man stepped forward, tall, dressed in a dark coat that didn't scream wealth but whispered it. He said nothing, simply handed the clerk a sleek black card. "You sure, sir?" the clerk asked quietly. The man nodded. The clerk swiped the card. Approved. He printed the ticket and handed it silently to Lena. She looked up, confused. Then she turned and saw him. He did not smile. He did not explain. His expression was unreadable. Calm, steady. His eyes, however, were something else entirely. Deep, heavy, not with pity, but with something closer to understanding. Lena stiffened. Her pride surged. "Thank you," she said quickly, quietly. Then she took Jamie's hand and turned away, walking as fast as her dignity would allow. "Mom," Jamie whispered as they walked toward the platform. "Who was that?" She did not answer. She could still feel the man's eyes on her back. She did not dare look over her shoulder. She simply squeezed her son's hand a little tighter. Back at the counter, the man watched them disappear into the crowd. He remained there, unmoving, as the line of passengers grew behind him. His name was Charles Morgan. No one at the station knew it, but he was the CEO of Morgan Metro Rail, the very company that owned and operated the vast train network threading through the city and beyond. Tonight, he had chosen, like he often did, to forego the private car and the backdoor executive entrance. He had always preferred walking among the people his company served. It reminded him of who he used to be. He had seen many things in his years, commuters, wanderers, runaways, but something about the woman with the golden hair and hollow eyes struck him. She had not begged. She had not explained. Her voice had not shaken with desperation, but rather with the quiet tension of someone who had held the line too long and had no more ground left to give. Charles turned away at last and stepped onto the escalator. He could still hear the child's cough, faint against the station's hum. He remembered that sound. Years ago it had been his own. Cold nights on benches, hunger wrapped in pride. And one moment, one person who had stepped in, paid a fare, and walked away. He never forgot it. Tonight, perhaps, it had been his turn to return that debt. And somehow, he knew, this was not the last he would see of her. Charles Morgan sat at his desk long after midnight, the glow of his monitor casting faint shadows across the room. The city lights shimmered beyond the glass, but inside, his mind spun restlessly. He should have let her go, the woman from the station. People passed through terminals every day, but her quiet words, "I'll come back," echoed louder than they should have. The boy's cough, her composure, it haunted him. Curiosity tipped into something deeper. He logged into the company's internal database and pulled up employee records. A few clicks later, Lena Matthews, night custodian, hired 19 months ago, clean record, well reviewed. The name stirred a memory. He opened a private browser and typed Lena Matthews, journalist. There she was. 4 years ago, she had been an investigative reporter for the Morning Beacon, known for a powerful series exposing Everbuilt, a construction giant accused of dumping toxic waste into rural groundwater. Charles remembered the headlines, the public outrage. Lena's writing had been unflinching. Quotes from grieving parents, interviews with scientists, damning environmental data. And then, silence. The paper issued a quiet retraction. Everbuilt filed a lawsuit. Lena disappeared from journalism. Charles had wondered at the time why no one fought back. Now he knew. He found a buried academic study published 2 years later, verifying Lena's original claims. The contamination had been real, the illnesses real, and Everbuilt had, in fact, covered it up. She was right, he whispered. So why had she vanished? He searched deeper and found the answer. A traffic accident report, filed the same week the scandal collapsed. Driver, Lena Matthews. Passenger, Aaron Wells. They had been en route to meet with a pro bono attorney. The road was slick from rain. The brakes failed. The car hit a tree. Aaron died on impact. Aaron Wells, Lena's collaborator, her source. More than that, her partner. A birth certificate confirmed it. Jamie Wells. Mother, Lena Matthews. Father, Aaron Wells. Jamie, the little boy from the station, 2 years old when his father died. Charles leaned forward, the pieces rearranging in his mind. The look in Lena's eyes now made sense. She had not just lost a job, she had lost the man she loved. Her voice, her place in the world. He opened her personnel file again. Nothing in it mentioned journalism, nothing about the truth she had once fought to tell. They didn't just silence her, Charles murmured. They buried her. And yet, she kept showing up, cleaning the very halls of the company whose silence had once let the truth die. No protests, no demands, just quiet survival. Charles closed the laptop and sat in stillness. What he felt wasn't just regret, it was reverence, and a rising urgency. Lena Matthews had told the truth and paid for it with everything. Now he could not stop thinking, maybe it was time someone told the truth about her. He stood and looked out over the sleeping city where somewhere a woman swept silent hallways with no one left to speak for her. But that was about to change. The rain fell in a soft drizzle, casting a reflective sheen over the tiled floors of the nearly empty station. It was just past midnight. the hour when most had gone home and the city had surrendered to quiet. Only a few flickering overhead lights remained, glowing amber and tired. Charles walked slowly down the hallway of the lower platforms, his polished shoes quiet against the floor. He had been here before, many times, but tonight felt different. He was not inspecting or overseeing, he was searching. And then he saw her. Lena Matthews moved along the corridor with a mop in hand, back slightly bent, her blonde hair tied messily at the nape of her neck. The janitor's cart creaked softly behind her. She worked in silence, sleeves rolled up, the echo of water hitting tile the only sound around her. He stopped a few feet away, not wanting to startle her. "You do not know me," he said gently, "but I know you, or at least, I remember what you stood for." Lena froze. Her hands tightened around the mop handle before she turned. Her eyes met his, alert, weary, and fiercely guarded. "I am not that person anymore," she replied, voice flat, edged with fatigue. Charles took a slow step closer, not intruding, just present. "You were brave," he said. "What you wrote saved lives." She let out a bitter breath, almost a laugh, but without amusement. "It also cost me everything," she said. "My job, my future, and the man I loved." Her voice faltered. The weight of those last few words hung between them like a storm cloud too heavy to hold back. She looked down, speaking more to herself than to him. "We were driving to meet someone who could help us sue Everbuilt. It was raining. The brakes didn't work. He didn't make it. I did." She blinked once, then twice, as if pushing the memory back into place where it would not hurt so loudly. Charles said nothing. He did not offer sympathy, did not try to fix the silence. He just nodded, a quiet acknowledgement of a truth too raw for comfort. At that moment, small footsteps echoed through the hallway. Jamie came running from a nearby corner, his little rain boots splashing against the wet tile. He barreled into his mother's leg, hugging her tightly, then looked up, his eyes widened. "Hi, you're the train guy." Charles knelt slightly to meet his gaze. "Hi there, champ." Jamie beamed, unbothered by the late hour or the tension in the air. Lena touched his shoulder. "Say goodnight," she whispered. Jamie gave a small wave, then leaned against her side. She turned to Charles. "Thank you for the ticket," she said, her voice softer now. He shook his head. "My life was saved by a man who believed in second chances," he said quietly. "I just wanted to be that man for someone else." Lena did not answer. She just nodded, once, tightly, before leading Jamie down the corridor and into the dim-lit tunnel beyond. Charles stood still long after they were gone, listening to the silence they left behind. The next morning, Lena opened her mailbox and found a large, padded envelope without a return address. Her name was written neatly in black ink across the front. She hesitated, then brought it inside, slicing it open carefully. Inside was a folder, thick, organized, and familiar, in a way that made her chest tighten. She pulled it open. Her old articles, every piece of the Everbuilt series, printed and preserved in perfect order. Highlighted were the most damning sections: the environmental data, the eyewitness quotes, the chemical analysis. Underneath was a stamped copy of a recent report, Environmental Validation Study by Dr. Isaac Renner, an independent scientist she once interviewed, now confirming everything she had written. There was a stack of typed letters next, some from residents of the affected town, others from parents who had moved away. Each one expressed gratitude, relief, and sorrow for what she had tried to do and what she had suffered. Then a handwritten note in elegant script: "You told the truth. I am one of hundreds who were saved because of it. Do not let anyone convince you that you were wrong for being right. And at the bottom of the package, a sealed envelope with the Morgan Metro Rail logo. Inside, a formal invitation. Position: Director of Communications Project, Clean Rails for Communities. From Charles Morgan. Lena sat on the edge of her sofa, heart pounding, letter in hand. For the first time in 4 years, someone had not only remembered her truth, but believed in it enough to give her a seat at the table again. Lena stared at the invitation on her kitchen table for the better part of an hour. It sat unopened now, though she had read it a dozen times. Her fingers hovered above it once more, but she pulled them back as if it might burn her. Director of Communications, Morgan Metro Rail, Clean Rails for Communities. It was everything she had once dreamed of, before the silence, before the headlines turned against her, before her voice had been buried with her partner. But dreams, she had learned, came at a price. She tucked the letter back into the envelope and dropped it into the drawer beneath the coffee maker. Out of sight, out of reach. Later that evening, her phone buzzed with a message from a number she did not recognize. It simply read, "Would you meet me at the West Side platform tonight? No suits, no pitch, just a conversation. C." Curiosity warred with caution. She did not owe him anything. And yet something inside her stirred. Against her better judgment, she bundled Jamie off to her sister's and took the train downtown. The West Side platform was mostly abandoned after hours. One old train car sat permanently parked on the far track, retired from service years ago. It had graffiti on one side, rusted hinges, a cracked front window. She found Charles sitting inside. No bodyguards, no fancy coat. Just a man in a simple jacket, sipping coffee from a dinted thermos. "You chose this place?" she asked, arms crossed, skeptical. He looked up and smiled faintly. "I used to sleep here." She blinked. "Excuse me?" He gestured around the old car. "Back when I was 17, after I aged out of foster care, this car was out of service even then, but no one noticed a skinny kid sneaking in at night. It was warm, safe enough." Lena hesitated, then stepped inside, letting the door clatter behind her. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Charles leaned forward. "One night, I was ready to give up. Just disappear. And a train conductor, an old guy, found me. He sat down right over there," he pointed to the seat beside her, "and said, 'Kid, if even one person believes in you, you don't walk away.'" He paused. "Believed in me. And I stayed." Lena looked away, biting her lip. "I'm not trying to rescue you," Charles continued. "I know you never needed saving. I see someone who stood for the truth, and they took everything from you for it. That's not right." She looked at him, the hesitation still behind her eyes. "What if it happens again? What if they come for me a second time, and this time I can't pull myself back? Then I will stand with you," Charles said simply. There was no plea, no polished speech, just a quiet promise spoken in the kind of voice people only used when they meant every word. Lena said nothing for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached into her bag and pulled out the envelope. She didn't open it. She just held it in her lap, fingers tracing the edge. It was not acceptance, not yet, but it was not rejection either. And for the first time in a long time, her hand stopped shaking. Lena took the job. She walked into the Morgan Metro Rail headquarters on a rainy Monday morning, wearing her only clean blazer and a pair of shoes that pinched slightly at the toes. Her badge read Director of Communications, Clean Rails for Communities. It still did not feel real. The conference room was full when she arrived. Executives, engineers, PR officers, all turning their heads as she stepped in. Some nodded politely, others simply stared. Lena sat down quietly, keeping her notebook close, her pen tighter. She asked good questions. She made strong suggestions. But the glances lingered. They remembered her name. By the end of the meeting, no one said a word to her. But when she returned to her desk, she found a small sticky note tucked under her notebook. In simple handwriting, it read, "Good questions." The next day, another one appeared. Sharp observation. They were unsigned, but she knew who they were from. Charles never said anything directly in the office. He gave her space, let her find her footing. But those little notes were enough to keep her going. Every afternoon, Jamie would arrive after school, dropping his backpack beside her desk like he owned the place. He would draw while she worked, sketches of colorful trains with wings, stations floating in the clouds, and sometimes little stick figures labeled Mom and Charles, standing side by side. One day, he handed her a new picture. It showed the three of them, Lena, Charles, and Jamie, sitting on a train eating sandwiches. "This is us," he said proudly, "when we go places together." Lena laughed, genuinely for the first time in weeks. Late one evening, she stayed back to finish a report. The office was quiet. Everyone else had gone home. She opened the drawer where she kept personal files and found an envelope she had almost forgotten. Inside was the letter Aaron had written years ago, the night before they were supposed to meet the environmental attorney. She unfolded the paper, her hands trembling slightly. "No matter what happens," it read, "keep telling the truth. Jamie deserves to grow up knowing that his mother was the bravest person I ever met." Her eyes welled up. She read it again, and then a third time. And in the silence of that office, she let herself cry. Not from grief, but from the weight of finally feeling seen again. The next morning, she pinned the letter to the corkboard above her desk. Later that day, as she poured herself coffee, one of the team's senior project managers walked by, saw the letter, and paused. He read it, then looked at her. He said nothing, just gave her a quiet nod and walked away. It was the first time someone in that office had acknowledged her past, not as a stain, but as something that mattered. One afternoon, in the staff cafeteria, Lena found herself sitting across from Charles for the first time since taking the job. Jamie was with a colleague down the hall, and the two of them shared a rare moment of stillness. "I used to think I needed to be loud to be strong," Lena said, stirring her tea. "But lately, I think silence with the right people is stronger." Charles smiled, reaching into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small, time-worn train ticket, creased at the edges. "I kept this," he said, sliding it across the table to her. Lena picked it up. The date printed was from years ago. The station name was familiar. Her byline had once been attached to the breaking story, an oil spill that had shut down that very route for weeks. "This was the first article of yours I ever read," he said. "I don't know why I kept the ticket. Maybe I was waiting to meet its author." Lena looked down at the ticket, then up at him. For the first time, she allowed herself to smile, not politely, but truly. She said nothing. She did not have to. It began with a headline. A popular news site published a piece titled, "CEO's Secret Ties to Disgraced Journalist." The article hinted at a romantic relationship between Charles Morgan and Lena Matthews, questioning her sudden appointment and dredging up her past with Everbuilt. The backlash was immediate. Social media erupted. Comment threads filled with speculation, accusations. Anonymous emails landed in Lena's inbox, calling her opportunistic. Some staff whispered behind her back. Others just stared. Charles was summoned to a closed-door board meeting. The directors demanded answers. citing concerns about public image and favoritism. Lena, already tired from the weight of proving herself day after day, made a decision. She typed her resignation letter that night. Short, to the point. She left it on Charles's desk without a note. But the next morning, the letter remained untouched. Later that afternoon, Charles held a press conference. To everyone's surprise, Lena stood beside him. He stepped to the microphone, calm but unflinching. "She is not here because of me," he said. "She is here because she is the only one who is willing to speak the truth when it mattered most. She lost her career because of that truth. She lost the man she loved." He paused, then added, "She saved lives with her voice. I owe her the chance to help more. No spin, no cover-up, just the truth." The room fell quiet, and for the first time, Lena saw the crowd look at her not with suspicion, but with something close to respect. The evening was cool and clear, the kind of night that felt like a pause between seasons. The city's skyline glowed in the background as guests gathered for the launch of the Clean Rails for Communities project. The venue was modest, a renovated station platform turned into an open-air stage. Strings of warm lights hung overhead. The scent of fresh paint and new beginnings was everywhere. Lena stood behind the curtain, holding a folded paper in her hand. Her name had just been called. Applause waited on the other side. Her palms were sweating. "I can't," she whispered. Jamie, dressed in a small blazer and tie, tugged on her sleeve. "You're the bravest person I know," he said, looking up at her with absolute certainty. She took a breath, then another, and walked onto the stage. The lights were bright, the crowd expectant. But Lena did not speak like a journalist. She did not list statistics or quote studies. She spoke like a mother. "I once believed that telling the truth would always be enough," she began. "But sometimes the world punishes those who do. I lost a lot, and I almost lost my voice." She looked at Jamie in the front row, beside Charles. "But someone gave me a second chance, and tonight, I'm here not to reclaim the past, but to build something better." The audience stood in applause. But Lena didn't cry. Not because she was holding back, but because at last she didn't need to. Days turned into weeks, and the project flourished. Lena and Charles worked seamlessly, like two parts of a machine that had long been broken apart but now, finally, found their way back to motion. There were no grand confessions, no late-night declarations, just quiet synergy, mutual trust, and moments of unspoken understanding. He always showed up 5 minutes before her presentations, never sitting in the front, but always in the same row. She always left a cup of black coffee by his side during early planning meetings. Neither mentioned it. Neither needed to. One Saturday morning, Lena hosted her first community workshop, Trains, Truth, and the Environment, inside the very station where she had once mopped floors at midnight. Children from local schools gathered, wide-eyed and restless, as she taught them about clean rail energy and conservation. Jamie helped, passing out crayons and worksheets. Charles stood just outside the door, hands in his pockets, watching. At the end of class, Jamie brought Lena a drawing. It showed her standing beside Charles, both of them smiling. Above them were little words scrawled in crayon. "Mom and the man with the silent heart." Later, when Lena showed it to Charles, he studied it for a long time. Then, quietly, he said, "That's the best portrait I've ever seen." It hit fast. One moment, Jamie was fine, giggling through a bedtime story. The next, he was burning up, his forehead hot to the touch, breath shallow and fast. Lena rushed him to the emergency room in the middle of the night, her coat barely pulled on, her shoes mismatched. The hospital's fluorescent lights made everything feel colder, sharper. She sat in the waiting room, clutching Jamie's backpack to her chest, heart pounding with helplessness. Hours passed. Doctors came and went. Tests were ordered, IVs connected. And Lena sat alone, her eyes fixed on the hallway, too afraid to cry. Then, footsteps. She turned. Charles. No words, no questions. He just sat beside her. After a moment, he reached out and placed his hand gently on her shoulder. Solid, steady, there. Lena did not move. She stared ahead, her lip trembling. Then, slowly, her head fell forward into her hands, and for the first time since Aaron died, she cried. Not from fear, not from pain, but from something she had nearly forgotten existed. Relief. The kind that comes when you finally realize you are no longer alone. Jamie recovered quickly, the way children often do, as if life itself had simply decided it owed him a break. With each passing day, his cheeks regained their color, his steps grew more energetic, and the soft cough that had once kept Lena up at night faded into memory. He returned to school, proudly showing classmates his drawings of trains and the project his mom made real. Charles began to appear more regularly, not just at meetings or briefings, but in the in-between moments. He would pick Jamie up when Lena had back-to-back presentations. Sometimes he waited outside Jamie's school with a coffee in one hand and a coloring book in the other. Jamie never questioned it. To him, Charles was just there. The Clean Rails for Communities project reached its first milestone, the launch of its inaugural line, cutting through the very neighborhood once poisoned by Everbilt's negligence. The area had been transformed into a riverside park, complete with walking trails, playgrounds, and a community garden built with volunteers Lena had helped recruit. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Lena stood beside Charles under a string of bright white lights. She wore a soft blue blazer, borrowed from a friend, and held Jamie's hand tightly in hers. When her name was called, the applause was louder than she expected. She stepped forward, spoke not from notes, but from memory, from truth. And when she stepped back, Charles didn't just shake her hand like the others. He stood beside her. As the event wound down, the three of them boarded the train together. Jamie raced to the window seat, pressing his face against the glass, wide-eyed. Lena sat beside him. Charles took the seat across the aisle, then paused and moved beside her instead. They did not speak for a while, letting the rhythm of the tracks speak for them. Then, gently, Charles turned to her. "I do not need you to say anything," he said. "No promises, no declarations, but if you want to be here, this is your seat. There will always be a ticket waiting for you." Lena looked at him. The fear that had once sat quietly behind her eyes was gone. She reached out and took his hand. "Then this time," she said, smiling, "let's ride together." Charles smiled, soft, genuine, a little surprised. From across the seat, Jamie grinned and shouted, "You guys are finally in love, huh?" Lena laughed, full and real. She leaned in, kissed Jamie's forehead and whispered, "We always were, just took us a little while to catch the train." The train hummed gently beneath them, gliding along the track like it knew exactly where it was going and who it was carrying. The afternoon sun melted slowly into gold, stretching long rays across the polished windows of the passenger car. Shadows danced lazily over the seats, soft and warm. Outside, the hills rolled past like waves, their green softened by the orange glow of late day. Jamie knelt on his seat, reaching into his backpack for a folded piece of paper. With a determined kind of focus, he smoothed the drawing against the train window and pressed a strip of tape on each corner. The paper crinkled slightly as it clung to the glass. The drawing was childlike and bright, done in marker and crayon. It showed a train station, a red and silver train, and three small figures standing hand in front of it. One had yellow hair, one wore a tie. The smallest had a giant smile and a cape drawn across his back. Above them, in careful blocky handwriting, were the words, "Our Home," and underneath that, scrawled in blue marker, slightly crooked but unmissable, "Where the truth began again." Lena glanced at the drawing and smiled, brushing her hand lightly across Jamie's head. He had fallen asleep now, curled against her side, one small hand still clutching a corner of his masterpiece. She leaned back against the seat, and as the train dipped into a slow turn along the hills, she let her head rest on Charles's shoulder. Neither of them spoke. They did not need to. The silence was full, with memories, with healing, with the soft certainty that they had finally arrived somewhere that felt like peace. From the outside, the train continued its path, a silver ribbon winding through the earth's gentle contours, moving forward, not fast, not loud, but steady. Charles's voice came, not aloud, but in the kind of narration that lives inside reflection. She did not need saving. She just needed someone to stand still long enough until she could rise again. And I did. But somewhere along the way, she saved me too. The camera would pull back if this were a film. The train would shrink to a dot, carving its way across golden hills beneath a sky that was neither ending nor beginning, just becoming. And inside that train, on a journey with no name, sat a woman who had once lost everything for the truth, a man who had once forgotten why it mattered, and a little boy who believed in both of them. Not every home has four walls. Some move on tracks. And this one was finally on its way. Thank you for watching this story of resilience, redemption, and quiet, unwavering love. If this journey touched your heart, if Lena's courage, Charles's quiet strength, and Jamie's innocent hope reminded you of the power of truth and second chances, then we invite you to be part of more stories just like this. Subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories and join our growing family of viewers who believe that even the softest voices can echo the loudest, that kindness still matters, and that sometimes a simple act of standing still can change a life. There are more stories to tell, more hearts to reach, and more moments waiting to stir your soul. Hit subscribe, stay inspired, and remember, home isn't a place. It's the people who stand beside you when the train finally arrives.